Let's talk about transparency. So, Oklahoma's budgeting process, and this is from the Oklahoma Policy Institute, who does good heavy lifting policy work. Oklahoma's budget process is a little funny. And the way that it is funny is that they do not release it until the very last minute. And so it will often be early May, and legislative session starts the first week in February. It'll be early May before we have any idea of like what the priorities are going to be, what the legislation is going to look like, what they're going to write down. And so what you have is this chart here, which shows all the different states and how long they do their budget process. And so you've got a lot that, they'll be in session for a few days. Arizona apparently might be the worst in the country. Like, they still haven't introduced their budget, or, they have a lot of days before they do it. But a lot of them have to introduce it very close to the beginning, and then you have many days, weeks to consider the ramifications. And then you scroll on down to old Oklahoma, and you have 1 day. You can barely see it there. 1 day to consider it before it gets voted on and move through the process. This is not a great system we have. Year to year, the budget doesn't change tremendously. So, a lot of programs, what's going to happen. But, each year there's ups and downs. There's priorities. There's more money. There's less money. And, it'd be nice to weigh in on how that happens.
Right. I think that, the biggest question, first of all, you've described this budget as funny and this process as funny and not so great. And now are you the optimist out of this pairing? Because
Perhaps.
I can think of a lot worse words to use for this process. But I think that it's interesting to see the parts of our government that are encouraged to be transparent, the parts that are like, oh, this is what you're supposed to see behind the curtain, and the other parts that are like, I am the great and powerful Oz still, that you are still, as the general public, cut off from this decision. And I just have questions of where that boundary line is drawn, why that boundary line is drawn, because I have a theory. And, I'm questioning what is the most transparent part of our government, where it seems like the budget is one of the least.
Yeah, I think based on the evidence, and of course there's this big write-up that you can read, and the argument that Oklahoma Policy Institute's making is that, budgets are hard, but that doesn't mean they have to be hidden. And, those of us that are in the communications and messaging business, if you want to be accurate about what you're doing, it takes a little bit of time to, get your words in order. And when you have, 24 hours to come up with what you got to come up with, just to either comment, say you support, say you oppose, say you have a different opinion on something, doesn't exactly yield the best results, I think. And of course, what happened this year was Governor Stitt, Speaker of the House, Pro Tem of the Senate, and a bunch of people who wrote the thing, all white dudes, of course, get up and say, this thing's great. You guys got nothing to worry about. We did it. Here it is. Delivering the baby. And it's sort of like, well, yeah, it's great when y'all know what's going on and what it says and who it affects. And you've been hashing that out for 3 months, yeah, it's great for you.
And how long is the budget? How many pages is this budget? Do you know?
I do not know the exact page count, but it's pretty substantial. It's yeah.
Right. And so how are you supposed to critically think? Oh, I'm sorry, we don't critically think in this state anymore. That's against the law. But if you critically think about this budget and you put your words in order, then how are you going to have time to read it? This is the kind of thing where you're like, here's 5 pages, here's 10 pages, here's this. And then someone read this as a, partnership so that you get the information out, because releasing something at hour 12, I don't know what the ninth hour, I don't know, ninth inning. Anyways,
11th, yeah.
11th hour, releasing something that late isn't transparency. It's bullying. It's like, oh, you want the carrot? You can say something, but we're not going to give you time to like really think about it. It's like a joke.
Yeah, it's 33 pages, but mind you, it's like
Dense.
dozens of sections allocating millions of dollars to like specific agencies. So it's, then you got to go back and compare it to the previous 33 page bill from the last year to see where the differences were. And I mean, it's a lot. Like it's not something you're going to bang out in 5 minutes of research. And so, I mean, obviously a lot of enterprising journalists go through it and try to find stuff. And, there were a few articles, but I mean, that's it. Like you get a couple articles and they cover some of the stuff. I mean, really people have no idea, I think, until until well after the fact.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not, and it's even like, at what point do they release this to their colleagues? At what point do they, specifically like the Democratic colleagues, at what point do we get a moment to really voice out our thoughts? And it's something that is like tricky transparency. It's the idea to say, well, we did give you time, but not adequate time.
Right. And so, here, I can pop it back up. Sorry. I was looking at it so you didn't have to see me scrolling around. But yeah, I mean, here it's House Bill 2900 if you are so inclined to go and read it. But yeah, it's 150 sections.
Bonkers. There's not enough highlighters for that.
Yeah, no, 33 pages, 150 sections.
Which also begs the question. I made the joke that like it was so big, like what are you gonna do? But if 150 sections fit on 33 pages, how substantial is their argumentation for these like budgets, right? If you think about all of these agencies, all of these programs, all 150 sections that are getting funded or defunded or increased in some way, what is in that budget that allows you to see that reasoning? It's none of it, which is like the bigger issue of like you have to do your own independent research. The average Oklahoman isn't going to be able to look at this budget and say, I understand this and I know what the pros and cons are and the motivations behind all these changes because it's so little.